So last video we started things off with this topic, and today we'll be finishing it off. The topic, in case you missed the last video, is that we'll be going through every team in the NBA, identifying their most underrated player, meaning these are the players that produce at a level that exceeds what the average fan tends to give them credit for. Last week we did the same thing with the most overrated players on each team, so I figured we should obviously do the same thing for the players on the opposite end of the spectrum. Also, last video I went through the teams in the Eastern Conference for their most underrated players, so if you missed that, be sure to go check it out after you watch this one. And now, obviously, we'll be going through the teams in the Western Conference. Before we start though, I want to thank PrizePicks for sponsoring this video. PrizePicks is the perfect service for all of us basketball fans here because when you're involved, it makes watching games every night so much more fun and engaging. Basically, it's an application that provides you with lines on all kinds of individual player props, such as points, rebounds, assists, three-pointers made, amongst others, and you simply have to choose whether you believe they will record over the set amount in the line or under the set amount in the line. Make your selections, wager however much you want to, and if your picks hit, you can win some big money. For some picks that I'm looking at making for today's slate of games, I'm thinking of going with D'Angelo Russell to score over 15.5 points, Kristaps Porzingis to make over 1.5 threes, and Karl Anthony Towns also to make over 1.5 threes. If this sounds at all intriguing to you, then go use the link down in the description of the video to sign up today, and use promo code REFERENCE to receive a 100% deposit match bonus up to $100. Once again, thank you to PrizePicks for sponsoring this video. Now let's get back to the topic at hand. Going in alphabetical order, we'll be starting with the Dallas Mavericks, and their most underrated player is Spencer Dinwiddie. Dinwiddie, admittedly, was having a pretty poor season when he was with the Wizards, but when he got traded to Dallas at the trade deadline, it breathed some fresh new life into him, and since then, he's been averaging a solid 17 points per game, while shooting it absurdly efficiently at 50% from the field and 39% from three, giving the Mavericks another reliable shot creator alongside Luka Doncic. Next up is the Denver Nuggets, and their most underrated player is Bones Hyland. Hyland is just a rookie who had an up and down year as a whole, but over the last month, he has been emerging into a legitimate threat off the Nuggets bench. In the 14 games that he's played in the month of March, he's been averaging 14 points and 4 assists per game, while shooting the lights out at 50% from the field and 49% from three. Up next is the Golden State Warriors, and their most underrated player is Jordan Poole. The return of Klay Thompson has overshadowed the work that Jordan Poole has been doing lately because he's been playing so well that he actually worked his way back into the starting lineup after being in their sixth man role for a while. In March, he's averaging 25 points per game, shooting 49% from the field and 44% from three, and his shot creation has been vital in Steph Curry's absence. Next up is the Houston Rockets, and their most underrated player is actually their star rookie, Jalen Green, believe it or not. Green had a lot of growing pains early on this season, and many people, admittedly myself included, were probably a little bit too harsh on his play early on. As the season has progressed, his production across the board has improved, he's shooting the ball much better overall, he's being more aggressive, and he's really looking like the future star guard he was drafted to be. Now, yet he still hasn't really been getting any buzz in the Rookie of the Year race that he probably should be. Up next, we have the Los Angeles Clippers, and their most underrated player is Terance Mann. Mann had a few huge performances in last year's playoffs, so you would think he would start to get more recognition for his work as an energizer, but despite averaging a career high this season in points, rebounds, assists, and steals, this season has just not been the case for some reason with him. Next up is the Los Angeles Lakers, and their most underrated player is Malik Monk. Monk took a risk going to the Lakers in free agency this summer on a minimum contract, but it's paid off for him even though the Lakers season as a whole has been pretty disappointing. He's averaging a career high in points, he's always ready to knock down threes, which is vital alongside LeBron James, and he can provide an instant spark of scoring off the bench or even in the games that he's been in the starting lineup. Up next, we have the Memphis Grizzlies, and their most underrated player is Desmond Bane. The media would lead you to believe that Ja Morant has been leading the Grizzlies single-handedly, but the Grizzlies have won 16 of 18 games that they've played without Ja Morant, thanks in large part to Desmond Bane's emergence as a borderline star talent alongside him. Bane came into the NBA as a sharpshooter from 3, but now he's also an incredibly balanced threat from all 3 levels, which makes it even more difficult to defend this rising Grizzlies team. Next up is the Minnesota Timberwolves, and their most underrated player is Jared Vanderbilt. Vanderbilt is basically the perfect glue guy in a lineup filled with shot creators, as he's a guy with a high motor, his energy on the offensive glass helps create a ton of second chance points, he plays tremendous defense, and he doesn't try to do too much out there. Next up is the New Orleans Pelicans, and their most underrated player is Herb Jones. Herb Jones was a second-round pick in the draft last year, yet he's easily been one of the most impactful rookies in the entire class. Without Zion Williamson playing, Herb Jones has had the opportunity to emerge, and emerge he has, as he's genuinely already borderline elite as a defender, he's a capable outside shooter, he's an incredibly versatile player on both offense and defense, and with him on the court, the Pelicans are actually a whole 6 points better per 100 possessions, which is tremendous impact. Up next is the Oklahoma City Thunder, and their most underrated player is Tre Mann. The Thunder are an incredibly young group, but amongst that youth, Tre Mann and his ability to create off the dribble stand out. His shiftiness and quickness with the ball in his hands, along with the amount of separation he can create between himself and his defender off the dribble, is unbelievable for a rookie, and that's the kind of skill set that typically develops top-tier scorers. Next up is the Phoenix Suns, and their most underrated player is Mikal Bridges. On the Suns, Chris Paul's leadership and playmaking along with Devin Booker's shot making get credited with a lot of the success of the Suns, but they're the second best defense in the league this season, and that's the part that can be credited most to Mikal Bridges. Bridges has been the best perimeter defender in the NBA this year, and the Suns have the best team in the NBA overall on the season, yet Bridges has gotten almost no Defensive Player of the Year buzz at all, which confuses me. Next up is the Portland Trail Blazers, and their most underrated player is Josh Hart. The Blazers team is currently at the moment filled with a bunch of unrecognizable faces, admittedly because of the rebuild they're going through at the moment, but Josh Hart has sneakily become a 20-point scorer with them since he's been traded there at the trade deadline. Up next, we have the Sacramento Kings, and their most underrated player is Harrison Barnes. The Kings are once again an underperforming team, but Barnes has been one of their most consistent players start to finish. He puts up about 17 points and 6 rebounds per game, he shoots the ball 47% from the field and 40% from 3, and while he may not be the flashiest player, he's always a reliable forward for them. Next up is the San Antonio Spurs, and their most underrated player is Jakob Poeltl. Poeltl has always been a solid bench big man in the past, but this year in a starting role, he's quietly having a career year across the board, as a reliable rim protector on defense, a double-double threat every night, and a player that finishes very efficiently around the rim. And finally, the last team in the Western Conference is the Utah Jazz, and their most underrated player is Bojan Bogdanovic. Year after year, Bojan always gives nothing but consistency in a secondary scoring role and lights out shooting from deep. This year he's averaging about 18 points per game, he's shooting 46% from the field and 39% from 3, and he's been more than capable of giving Donovan Mitchell a lift offensively when the Jazz need it from him. And with that being said, that's all I have for you today. Make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and comment down below who you think is underrated in the Western Conference right now. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you all next time.